Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Absolute Spirit YouTube channel. Matt and Alice here. We are continuing our reaction to Snook's The Philosophy Tier List video and the tier list contained within it. If you haven't seen part one, please go do that because that explains more about what we're doing here, and it's cool. You will see the original philosophies and their placements, both where Snook placed them and where we uh, placed his philosophies and our reactions to his tier list. And all that is in part one, and we're just going to continue the video and the tier list today in this video. So, do you have anything to say before we begin part two, Alice?
No, I'm good. Let's get into it.
All right, we're starting off with determinism. So let's get into it.
Determinism is a philosophical concept suggesting that all events, including human actions, are ultimately determined by causes external to the will. It proposes that every event, decision, and action unfolds according to a chain of cause and effect relationships dictated by preceding causes and conditions governed by natural laws. This perspective challenges the notion.
So just a quick pause here. What he's describing is known as natural determinism, and this is not the only form of determinism. There are metaphysical forms of determinism.
Metaphysical
Nietzsche.
meaning like God, like to determine something.
It could be
Sort of thing?
God. It could be a metaphysical will. I was going to bring
Okay.
up Nietzsche and Schopenhauer as examples of metaphysical determinists. They believe there is an underlying will, which he also said it's separate from the will, which I'm assuming he means it's a subjective will, because, whoops, um, yeah, that they believe that there is an external like metaphysical will, if that makes any sense,
Yeah,
kind of guiding reality, and this is not a natural thing per se, at least in the way that I think it's being explained here as a kind of like a physical
right.
thing. I mean, yes, that viewpoint does exist. He's not necessarily wrong. It's just again the scope of determinism is a little wider than I think is what is being presented here.
Yeah,
Although for the
totally.
most part, this is pretty accurate. I just wanted to expand the scope of that a little bit. Did you have any thoughts so far, Alice? Should we keep going?
No, yeah, I'm cool.
Sounds good.
Of free will, implying that the future is already predetermined by the past in the present state of the universe. In determinism, human autonomy is questioned, as our actions are seen as an inevitable outcome of prior circumstances and factors beyond our control. There are various forms of determinism, each emphasizing different factors that influence human behavior and events. Causal determinism asserts that every event is necessitated by preceding events and natural laws, while biological determinism argues that human behavior is determined by biological factors like genetics and neurochemistry. Psychological determinism posits that human actions are determined by psychological factors such as unconscious drives or conditioning. And environmental determinism suggests that human behavior is shaped by external factors such as culture, society, and the environment you live in. Determinism has profound implications for philosophy, touching on areas such as ethics, metaphysics, and the philosophy of the mind. It raises questions about moral responsibility and the possibility of genuine human agency within a deterministic framework. Despite the challenges it poses to traditional notions of freedom, some philosophers advocate for compatibilism, which argues that determinism and free will are actually compatible, allowing for a meaningful sense of freedom and responsibility within the constraints of deterministic forces. Determinism remains a subject of ongoing debate and exploration, as it prompts deep reflections on the nature of reality, human nature, and the limits of human knowledge. Determinism is another unique mainstream philosophy. It is hard to agree with, though, because free will is true and real according to almost every philosophy and religion worldwide that says
Whoa.
humans.
Yeah, that's
No.
kind of broad.
Yeah. I don't just want to say straight up wrong, but
No,
many philosophies that I encounter at least do not just take free will as like a granted thing. Um,
yeah, I feel like it's kind of one of the fundamental questions of philosophy.
I agree. Up to this point, though, this has been pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm interesting to see where he places it. I have a feeling it's going to be low because he said it's hard to agree with because free
Yeah,
will is such like a I don't know.
integral.
Oh, yeah, almost like a which assumed thing, or that's how at least that's coming off to me. But yeah, I disagree with that. I think at least quality philosophies that I've encountered are, very like free will and just freedom in general has its the question of it is at its core of the philosophies. So
Yeah,
um,
totally.
yeah, so that's interesting. Anything else to add, or should we see where he places it?
No, yeah, let's see where he goes.
Humans do have free will, and having people's lives predetermined is hard to prove, but also hard to disprove. So who really knows? But I don't think that this philosophy has a lot of, evidence, I guess. So I'll go with C tier.
Oh, interesting. Um, if you're looking, the strongest philosophical evidence that I could think of off the top of my head right now for philosophical determinism, read some Spinoza, guys. That is like actually incredible. Uh, I've never seen quite a what's known as geometrical proof of Spinoza's type of determinism. But fear not, his determinism is actually quite beautiful and advocates for finding freedom. Kind of what Snook was describing earlier, finding freedom by identifying your place in the realm of deterministic causes. Highly recommend Spinoza, specifically the Ethics. That is some great deterministic literature that provides proof that is quite interesting that I can't really go into without getting super detailed and jargony, but highly recommend that. Just wanted to say that. Now, in terms of the placement, I would put determinism personally A or S tier, just because I believe it can be argued for so strongly and does have lots of compelling implications, I guess. Just as a fan of Spinoza's arguments and subsequent philosophers who are into those as well, such as Hegel. I'm a big fan of those things, and I think they're well argued for, and I think there's lots of value to be found in them. So I would personally place that at A or S tier. What are your thoughts on this, Alice?
Yeah, I think for me, determinism goes into like a B or maybe even C tier. I think it's definitely arguable and definitely a very useful philosophy. Um, but I tend to lean more towards free will, or at least like compatibilism over determinism.
Gotcha. Cool. So those are our takes on that. Any other thoughts, or should we move on to empiricism?
Let's do empiricism.
Cool.
Empiricism. Empiricism, which is a philosophical stance, highlights sensory experience and observation as the primary sources of knowledge about the world. In constraint to rationalism, which we'll cover next, which prioritizes reason and innate ideas, empiricism asserts that all knowledge ultimately stems from sensory perception and experience. Key principles of empiricism include sense perception, wherein knowledge is derived from direct sensory experiences like seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. Empiricists argue that experience serves as the foundation for acquiring information about the external world. Moreover, empiricism views experience as the sole source of knowledge, encompassing both empirical observations of the external world and introspective observations of one's own mental states and experiences. Empirical evidence obtained through observation and experimentation holds primacy in forming beliefs and making claims about reality. Empiricists often employ inductive reasoning, drawing general conclusions or making predictions based on specific observations or data. This form of reasoning enables them to generalize from observed instances to broader principles or patterns. Closely linked with empiricism is the scientific method, which entails formulating hypotheses, conducting experiments, and analyzing empirical data to test and refine scientific theories. Empirical research is foundational to scientific inquiry and knowledge acquisition. Empiricism has left an indelible mark in various fields, including philosophy, psychology, and science. Renowned empiricist philosophers like John Locke, David Hume, and John Stuart
It's
Mill
Hume.
have significantly
Let's go.
shaped the development of empiricism as a philosophical doctrine. While empiricism underscores the significance of sensory experience and empirical evidence in knowledge acquisition, it has encountered criticism for its limitations, such as the potential fallibility of sensory perceptions. Nevertheless, empiricism remains a fundamental approach to understanding, guiding inquiry, and exploration across diverse realms of human knowledge. I think that empiricism is a great way to look at the world because it's very easy to grasp and understand compared to other philosophies or religions, because everything is physical and you can, use your five senses to understand it. So you can understand water pretty easy. You can see it, you can taste it, you can smell it, you can feel it, etc. And that is way more understandable and easy to grasp compared to thinking about death or what's after death. So that's where my critique comes in, because empiricism doesn't touch on life or death, because there really isn't any science saying what happens after death. Sure, many people or empiricists might think it just goes black after that, you just cease to exist, but it doesn't really touch on that. So that's the one critique I have for it. So I'll go with B tier for empiricism.
Okay, that was pretty an interesting take. All the explanation was pretty spot on. I don't have any criticism there. Interesting placement and critique. I find it interesting how Snook went the existential practical route again in critiquing empiricism. That's honestly probably the first time I've seen that. Most critiques of empiricism I've seen come from what we're going to see next, rationalism, or just philosophers that come after Kant, who famously synthesized empiricism and rationalism. But I haven't seen really any existentialist critiques of empiricism, so that's interesting for me.
Yeah,
About
can't
sorry, what's
can't
up?
think hard enough. So
Yeah. In terms of the placement, I guess B tier is fair. I don't know. I kind of want to put it up to A tier just because it is so foundational to knowledge.
yeah, I was thinking
Um,
that as well. I think also just experience-based knowledge is such a great concept and a useful concept.
oh yeah, it is. Both Hegel and Kant, some of my favorite philosophers, they agree that experience is the beginning of knowledge. So
Right.
Kant famously says that doesn't mean necessarily that all knowledge comes from experience, but we kind of begin knowledge through experience. And
Yes.
then Hegel famously begins his phenomenology of spirit with the sense certainty section, where the individual self-consciousness, who doesn't even know that it's an individual self-consciousness, is just presented with objects and goes, wow, this is an object, and it is here, and it is now, and that's kind of how consciousness begins. So it's so foundational. As
Yeah.
Hegel and Kant and even anyone who thinks about it like that really can see. So I have great respect for empirical knowledge and a lot of tenets of empiricism. I would probably put it at A tier, I think.
I feel very similarly. I think I would have an A or S placement of empiricism.
Nice. Any other thoughts, or should we move on to rationalism?
Let's move on.
Cool.
Rationalism. Rationalism is a philosophical standpoint that places reason and rationality at the forefront as the primary means of attaining knowledge and understanding reality. And unlike empiricism, which emphasizes sensory experience and observation, rationalism asserts that certain truths can be known independently of experience through the use of reason alone. Key principles of rationalism include the primacy of reason, which is considered the foundation of knowledge, and the belief in innate ideas or concepts inherent to the human mind, present from birth, and the reliant on sensory experience for acquisition. Rationalism also posits the existence of universal principles or truths that are timeless and immutable, accessible through rational reflection. Additionally, rationalists often turn to mathematics and logic as prime examples of knowledge gained through reason, viewing mathematical and logical truths as necessary and certain, providing a basis for understanding the world. They typically employ deductive reasoning. drawing conclusions from general principles or premises through logical interference to derive new knowledge. Rationalism has had significant influence across various fields, including philosophy, mathematics, and science. Renowned rationalist philosophers like René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz have contributed to its development. While rationalism emphasizes the power of reason, it has also faced criticism for potentially overlooking the importance of empirical evidence and sensory experience in understanding the world. Nonetheless,
My primary function is to create a balance, unavoidable.
rationalism remains evidence and sensory experience in understanding the world. Nonetheless, rationalism remains a prominent approach to knowledge and understanding. And rationalism and empiricism are very similar and different at the same time, so I think it would be unfair to rate one higher than the other. So I will go
Interesting.
B tier for rationalism.
Interesting placement and explanation. I agreed with that initial statement, but there was not really further elaboration.
Yeah.
Um,
What ways do you feel they're similar?
what's that?
What ways do you feel they're similar? He was saying they're similar and different.
Um, they're similar in the sense that they're both like subject oriented, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like they both take into account the human experience
Right.
of knowledge compared to like because rationalism and empiricism. So maybe this is some good historical background actually that Snook didn't add in, which honestly isn't like that essential, but maybe is interesting for my point here. These are both modern epistemologies. These weren't really a thing pre like Descartes and pre like John Locke, who was one of the founders of empiricism. Um, before that, knowledge was kind of viewed as more of like an outside of human thing that
Right.
we like kind of gained through various means, which kind of is more of an empiricist approach, but not in the same way that modern empiricists talked about it, like the ones brought up in the video, like Hume and Locke and Leibniz. It was just different kind of knowledge. But the best example I can come up with the top of my head is Plato and his forms, for example, or even Aristotle with the idea of unity and form, making up kind of identity and like thinghood and the ability to know it. So these kind of like ancient Greek ways of knowing are very like object based, and you kind of just have to be lucky or like well endowed to like kind of get that. And then this also differs from like medieval epistemology, which turned a much more theological, in which knowledge was bestowed upon you by God or something, right? So that was also very external. Whereas rationalism and empiricism, they're very similar in the sense that they both kind of give primacy to like the human. They focus on the human in terms of where knowledge originates, if that makes sense. And there is a kind of separation of metaphysics and epistemology around this time that isn't sealed until Kant kind of blends rationalism and empiricism, which they are similar in that way too, in that they're blendable. Which if we maybe it's just worth making a separate video in terms of how Kant blended rationalism and empiricism. But they're similar in that way too. And then and in terms of differences, they're different in all the ways that Snook covered them very, very well. So I'm not gonna re-go into that. Did that answer your question, Alice? Sorry, that was a little long-winded.
Yeah, that was helpful.
Great. Yeah, and in terms of the placement, I would also place this at ARS. Also, I think this photo editing might be a little messed up. I believe he put empiricism in B tier, but it's showing an A, and he wanted to equal these. But empiricism is above rationalism, so that might have been a little error, but hopefully we can verbally correct that at least. Yeah, and I would also place them similarly. Maybe personally, rationalism would be a little higher for me. but not that much higher, just because they're both so integral to knowledge. I feel, especially considering philosophy, Kant, and post Kant. So that's my take. Do you have any additional comments or takes, Alice?
Let's come to the next philosophy.
Cool.
Let me know what you guys think down below. Existentialism. Existentialism is a philosophical movement that emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries, particularly in Europe, and it focuses on the individual's experience and freedom in a seemingly meaningless or absurd world. So this one's similar to absurdism. Key existentialist themes include the exploration of existence, freedom, choice, responsibility, and the search for meaning in life. One central idea of existentialism is the notion of existence precedes essence, meaning that individuals exist first and then define themselves through their actions and choices.
Just a quick little comment there. That doesn't only apply to individuals. That's, as at least as I understand it, a more broad metaphysical claim. Existence precedes essence. That doesn't apply to only individuals. I think that was given more as an example, but I just wanted to clear that up.
So it applies to like plants and nature and that sort of thing
Exactly,
as well.
like literally everything, yes. As far as I know, anyway. Yes, so it's a little broader than just individuals.
Existentialists reject the idea of predetermined human nature or essence and emphasize the individual's freedom to create their own meaning and identity. Another important concept in existentialism is the idea of authenticity. Authenticity involves living in accordance with one's true self, values, and beliefs, rather than conforming to societal expectations or norms. Existentialists encourage individuals to embrace their freedom and take responsibility for their choices, even in the face of uncertainty or existential angst. Existentialism often explores themes of alienation, isolation, and the experience of being alone in the world. Existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, and Albert Camus grapple with the challenges of human existence, confronting questions about the meaning of life, the nature of existence, and the inevitability of death. And I think this one is a good way to look at the world. Once again, very similar to absurdism, which I did rank S tier, but this one may be A tier for me because I think just finding a decent way to go throughout life without having to really conform to a certain thing is good. Having your own sort of ways to go about life is important and create your own meaning for your own life. So yeah, A tier. Stoicism.
Okay, interesting placement. A tier for existentialism. Personally, I disagree with it. I would place it B or C tier. A lot of that for me has to do with that core tenet, which I went into a little bit and Snook did as well, that existence precedes essence. I just think that's a bit of a metaphysical step backwards after our in-depth understanding of both essence and existence. I think that was kind of at its peak in like the German idealist era, around the time Hegel wrote his great work Science of Logic, in which he deals with these topics very extensively. And when I read existentialist texts, I just feel like they tend to pick or choose certain, like they're very clearly influenced by texts like that, but they tend to pick and choose which ones they like to focus on. And I think they do that with the aim maybe of making it more relatable, more accessible, which I find admirable, but also a little dangerous, just because I think you can take and leave, a little too much if you're not very careful. Yeah, so for me it would probably be B or C tier, although it's not totally worthless at all, especially that's more maybe practical elements of like taking individual responsibility and creating your own meaning, I think are pretty valuable. But again, you want to make sure you have that strong like theoretical metaphysical backing before you kind of just buy into this philosophy full force. So for me, it would be B or C tier for those reasons. Do you have any takes on this placement, Alice?
Yeah, I mean, I think like when I hear existentialism, I think about like just being existential, kind of like considering like the universe and the world and like its strangeness and that sort of thing. Um, so I guess like the act of being existential and like having existential crises is something that I think is pretty integral. However, the philosophy itself, as it's been defined, I'm not crazy about. So yeah,
Do you have a tier you would place it in specifically?
probably like B or C.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Let's move on.
Stoicism. Stoicism, an ancient philosophical school originating in Greece and later flourishing in Rome, offers practical guidance for living a fulfilling life through personal ethics, self-discipline, and resilience. It emphasizes virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline as the path to eudaimonia. Central to Stoicism is the acceptance of nature, urging individuals to embrace the natural order of the universe and recognize what is within their control and what is not.
Just a quick note that might be helpful. The term eudaimonia was brought up, and that's what the virtues ideally lead to in Stoicism, as was just explained. But eudaimonia is kind of like the ultimate fulfilling happiness. Not just like a fleeting feeling of happiness, but kind of a deeper, like abstract philosophical fulfillment of like living a meaningful life is kind of a good way to think about eudaimonia, at least as it was taught to me. So I just wanted to explain that more.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. I was confused on that.
No problem. Glad it could help. Let's continue.
Accepting the inevitability of change and impermanence, Stoics seek inner peace and serenity. Stoicism also emphasizes the control of one's will, advocating for self-discipline and rationality to overcome destructive emotions and achieve inner tranquility. The concept of amor fati, or love of fate, encourages individuals to embrace all experiences, both positive and negative, as part of a larger cosmic plan, finding meaning and purpose in.
I also just want to pause there. Stoicism is very broad, and there are various types of Stoicism, which definitely don't all get along. And that amor fati doctrine, specifically, as you could see, was quoted in that section of the video by Marcus Aurelius, and that is specifically an Aurelius doctrine that doesn't apply to all Stoic schools. So to be a Stoic, you definitely don't have to buy into that necessarily, unless you're trying to specifically follow Aurelius's instance of Stoicism. So I just wanted to point that out there. We can continue on.
In every situation. Additionally, Stoicism urges individuals to live in the present moment, letting go of regrets about the past and worries about the future. By focusing on the here and now, individuals can find contentment and fulfillment in the present moment. Stoic principles have had a profound impact on Western philosophy and continue to resonate with people seeking practical wisdom for navigating life's challenges. Adopted by leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, and scholars alike, Stoicism offers timeless guidance for cultivating resilience, wisdom, and inner peace in the pursuit of meaningful life. And I don't think I have much to say here other than S tier, because I think searching for complete eudaimonia and letting go of your past regrets about the past, and you don't need to worry about the future either. You just focus on the here and now and focus on you here and now and just focus on becoming the best version of yourself. And I think it's hard to argue anything other than S tier for Stoicism.
I will take you up on that challenge. I will argue something that is not S tier for Stoicism. I will argue for B or C tier, and here's why. Two main reasons that are kind of related. The first one being the main one, I think, for me. This is in line with Hegel's critique of Stoicism, is that it gets way too far removed from like concrete reality, especially. Snook kind of highlighted how it advocates for removing yourself from past and future and focusing on the present. But as philosophers like Hegel show in their philosophies, the past and present are hugely important, not only for like individual like practical and like ethical considerations, but also like metaphysically, they're super important. So just kind of removing past and future is not a great idea. I would say those things are very valuable and can and do provide, I think, lots of value to life, and just ignoring them for the sake of finding inner peace is not something I would consider to be wise. And goes into my next point, which is actually, I think it can also, taken to its most extreme versions, I think it can be quite selfish. Snook also highlighted how, the point is finding like individual inner peace. But again, taken to a very big extreme, when you just remove yourself from past and present and other people and focus on yourself and your own virtues, even if you don't mean to, you could find yourself ignoring the needs and desires of other people, and leave lots of people in your life high and dry, so to speak, if that makes sense. It can be very dangerous too. He mentioned like entrepreneurs and like CEOs, I think, are very into lots of Stoic philosophy.
Yeah.
And that has led way to, I mean, obviously this isn't the only thing at play here, but in this late stage capitalist nightmarish
Yes.
hellscape, to be a little dramatic with it, although maybe not too dramatic, that we
Yeah.
find ourselves in, we find a lot of, even though, to be fair, they are quite like bastardized and taken out of context, but we do find lots of stoic-esque things at the forefront of these attitudes that lead us to the political, economic, ethical situation that we're living in today. Granted, that's all been kind of bad things about Stoicism. I do want to highlight the good things that Snook highlighted as well, like the virtues, that some of which were shown on the screen before. You can rewind it and look at those. Those are very helpful. I think virtues are definitely a good place to like start with ethics, and like honestly good thing to keep throughout ethical considerations in your own ethical development and journey. Though I do think the concept of virtue can be critiqued, definitely. It's at least a step in the right direction and a good way to think about morals and ethics, especially when first starting out. So for me, it's like a B or C tier. Not totally, definitely, like there's a lot of value in it, but taken to its extreme, it can be very dangerous, very self-centered. And I think it's definitely easy, well, maybe not easy, but definitely possible to argue that it's not S tier, despite what Snook has just told us. So that's my take. Do you have anything on this, Alice?
Yeah, I think with Stoicism, it's complicated for me. Like, I like a lot of the points that Snook brought up. I think Stoicism offers a lot of helpful tips, and I don't know if that's the right word, but kind of thoughts about how to live, like, and how to regulate yourself emotionally. But like you were saying, I think it often gets taken to this extreme place of like complete emotional isolation, um, meaning like isolating yourself from your emotion and kind of saying like, kind of like, I think it can often lead to like not accepting like fundamental parts of you, like desire and um, like reaction and pain and hurt and emotion. And a lot of people can just kind of take it as like um, yeah, like a way to cut themselves off from the world. And like you were saying with like the entrepreneurs and like kind of like removing any sense of like empathy, which again not always the case, and I think there's a lot of value that can be found in stoicism, but it also, like you're saying, has a lot of potential for things that I think are more negative.
Definitely. Cool. Do you have a specific tier range you would place it in?
Yeah, like B or C.
Cool. Looks like it's the last one, but I suppose let's not have some final words, and maybe we'll have some interesting reactions to those. Let's see.
And all right, that wraps up the philosophical tier list explained, I guess. There wasn't many on here, but it was a 25-minute video around there. So that's long enough, I think. 9 different philosophies, ranked them all differently. I think
that is fair. I think at part 1 especially, I was a little skeptical as to like the lack of depth and lack of variety, but this is a 25-minute YouTube video, so
Yeah.
definitely want to be a little lenient on that. And a lot of them were explained very well too. Definitely more good explanation found in this video than bad, I think. Even if it is service level a bit, especially for introductory things, this is pretty good. So, all right, yeah, let's see what he's about to say.
perfect length for a tier list video. Let me know if you want a part 2, because I really enjoyed making this and scripting it. It was great.
Maybe
I really
he'll do a
enjoyed
part
it.
2 as well.
Philosophy is just so
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, just I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I want to hear down below, did you agree with me? Did you agree with my rankings? Did you agree if I put something in S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier? Did you agree with it? Yes or no? Please let me know down in the comments, because I definitely read all your comments, and I'll definitely reply if I think it's a decent feedback you gave, or just opinion. So
You
yeah,
replied to this video.
let me know if
Yeah,
you'd
that
like to
would
see
be
more
really
tier
cool.
lists of something else in the future, because I definitely enjoyed making this video a lot of fun. Yeah.
I agree. This was pretty fun.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
You're still 25 minutes in listening to me yap. Subscribe and like the video.
All right.
Help.
Looks like that's the end of the content there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was pretty well put together. All my critiques have already been said. I don't really have anything else. Yeah, overall, decent video, I think. Some interesting takes for sure. Definitely don't agree with the tier list in its entirety. But the explanations were pretty well put together, I think. So good job on that front. Hopefully, if Snook or any Snook fans, or just anyone watching this, hopefully we've provided some value input as well. Yeah, I don't know. Those are kind of my closing thoughts. Do you have any more, Alice?
Yeah, I think this is I'm really enjoying this format of sort of like critiquing pop philosophy. I
Yeah.
think it's helpful because I think that these videos are really cool and spread a lot of helpful information and just get people thinking about philosophy, but they can often be sort of lacking depth and lacking context, which is relevant and important to if you're really looking to like get into philosophy and understand philosophy and have an impact on your life. I think that it's helpful to do more of a deep dive than just like this brief overview.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully we got a little more deep with the dive. Pretty interesting. I hope Snook makes a part 2. Honestly, I'd be interested in reacting to another one.
Yeah, totally.
Don't want to get too repetitive with the content, but we've got lots of more interesting content on the way. So
Yes.
if he does make a part 2, I think we'll be sure to hop on that. So hopefully this is well received. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you for watching, especially if you watched both parts. That's especially appreciated and valued.
Yes, absolutely.
And please let us know your thoughts. We value them most so dearly, not only in this video, but just on any video or anywhere you want to reach us. We have a Patreon, so that's cool. Check that out if you're interested in supporting us. We're both either entering graduate school or finishing up undergraduate education, so that's very appreciated as well.
Yes, the college grind.
Yes, it's so real, and so financially straining, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
but this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for sticking with us, and we hope to see you in another video, whether it's a reaction video, a meme review, an explainer. If you want another kind of video, please let us know as well, and we'll be more than happy to accommodate you if we have the time and resources to do so, which I'm sure we would, especially at this stage in our YouTube career. So thank you so much again. It's been wonderful. This has been Absolute Spirit, and unless Alice has any closing thoughts, we'll see you later.
Yes, thank you, Snook, for the video. Hopefully you have watched this. That'd be really cool. Yeah, goodbye.